For months, my wife Elena had been obsessed with her newfound commitment to fitness. It started innocently enough. She signed up for a gym membership and bought a collection of workout gear. "I want to feel better about myself," she'd said, flashing that radiant smile that once made my heart race. I supported her, of course, even though her sudden determination seemed a little out of character. The late-night sessions began soon after. She claimed the gym was less crowded in the evenings, making it easier for her to focus. At first, I believed her, proud that she was so dedicated. But as the weeks wore on, things started to feel off. Her workouts always seemed to run longer than expected. She'd come home, flushed and distracted, often clutching her phone as if it held a secret. The gym bag she left with never seemed to be filled with sweaty clothes when she returned. Then there were the little things, the sudden urgency to shower the moment she got home, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked her how her workout went. The gut feeling that something wasn't right gnawed at me relentlessly. It was time to find out the truth. It was a Tuesday night when I finally decided I couldn't take it anymore. Elena had packed her gym bag, kissed me absent-mindedly on the cheek, and hurried out the door. "Don't wait up," she called, her voice trailing off as the door clicked shut behind her. Those words echoed in my mind like a challenge. I wasn't waiting up. I was taking action. I grabbed my car keys and slipped on a dark hoodie, my heart pounding with equal pouts dread and determination. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't let me stay on the couch. I needed answers, even if they shattered my reality. I followed her car at a safe distance, my headlights off as I maneuvered through the dimly lit streets. She drove with a purpose, her route precise and familiar. My palms slicked with sweat as I gripped the steering wheel, adrenaline heightening my senses. Instead of heading toward the gym, she turned onto a side road I didn't recognize. A million scenarios raced through my mind, each one worse than the last. Maybe she'd picked a different gym. Maybe she'd gone to meet a friend. Maybe. No, I couldn't let my imagination spiral. I had to stay focused. She eventually pulled into the parking lot of a small, nondescript building. No gym equipment was in sight, just a dark lot and a cluster of parked cars. I parked a few spaces away and watched as she stepped out of her car. She wasn't in workout gear. Instead, she wore a figure-hugging dress and high heels, her hair styled in a way that made her look effortlessly seductive. My heart sank. Elena glanced around as if checking for onlookers before walking toward the side entrance. My chest tightened as I realized she wasn't expecting anyone to follow her. For a moment I sat, frozen, my mind screaming at me to turn back, to let ignorance preserve whatever peace I had left. But something stronger pushed me forward, the need for the truth. I got out of my car and followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. As she disappeared inside, I crept closer, my breath shallow. Through a crack in the blinds of a window, I saw her, greeted by a tall man with broad shoulders and an easy smile. He placed his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward a small, candle-lit table. My stomach churned as they laughed, their faces unguarded and intimate. It wasn't just physical. This was emotional. The way she looked at him, like he was the center of her world, was something I hadn't seen in years. I leaned back against the cold brick wall, struggling to breathe. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, but anger quickly overtook the pain. She thought she was clever, hiding behind late-night gym sessions, but she didn't realize she was playing a game she couldn't win. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As I stood outside that building, the weight of what I had just witnessed pressed down on me. Anger and betrayal surged through my veins, but I knew that acting impulsively wouldn't serve me. Storming in, confronting her and demanding answers might feel satisfying in the moment, but it wouldn't give me the closure or clarity I needed. I needed proof. Something undeniable, something she couldn't talk her way out of. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and began recording a video of the scene through the window. It felt invasive, wrong even, but I reminded myself that she had already crossed the line. Her lies had forced me into this position. I zoomed in, capturing her leaning toward the man, their laughter audible even from where I stood. She placed her hand on his arm, a gesture so familiar yet so foreign when it wasn't directed at me. I recorded for several minutes, documenting their every move. They weren't just two people having a casual conversation. Their body language screamed intimacy. The way she gazed at him, her eyes lighting up with every word he said, it was clear this wasn't their first meeting. The man handed her a small box wrapped neatly with a red ribbon. My stomach churned as she opened it, revealing a delicate silver bracelet. She slid it onto her wrist, smiling like a teenager in love. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to burst in and end this charade right then and there. Instead, I kept recording, determined to get as much evidence as possible. When they got up to leave the table, I ducked back into the shadows, careful not to be seen. They walked to his car together, their hands brushing against each other in a way that sent my blood boiling. He opened the car door for her, a gesture I hadn't seen her appreciate from me in years. She slid inside, laughing at something he said, and they drove off. I followed them cautiously, my heart pounding with every turn. They didn't go far, just to a nearby hotel. My chest tightened as I watched them disappear through the lobby doors, hand in hand. This was no misunderstanding, no innocent outing between friends. It was exactly what I had feared. A full-blown affair. I parked across the street, the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I had enough proof to confront her now, but I wanted to be strategic. There was no way she could deny what she'd seen, but I needed time to process my emotions and decide what came next. Confrontation wasn't just about releasing my anger. It was about taking control of my life and determining what I wanted moving forward. As I loaded the last suitcase into my car, I took one final look at the house. Elena stood at the doorway, her expression a mix of despair and regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but I didn't respond. I had already heard all the apologies I needed. Driving away felt bittersweet, but with each mile, the weight on my chest lifted. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in years I felt like I was in control of my own life. I would heal, rebuild, and eventually find someone who valued the love and trust I had to give. This chapter was over, but a new one was waiting to be written. A story where I was the main character, where my happiness wasn't sacrificed for someone who didn't deserve it. And that, I realized, was a story worth living. Sitting in the car, I reviewed the footage on my phone, each moment like a dagger to the heart. I would give her no room for excuses, no chance to twist the truth. The evidence spoke for itself, and soon so would I. Driving back home that night, the silence in the car was deafening. My mind raced, flooded with questions, anger, and the overwhelming need for answers. How long had this been going on? Was I just a placeholder while she built a life with someone else? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, focusing on the road to keep my emotions in check. The confrontation was inevitable, but I needed to approach it with a clear head and a solid plan. I spent the next day preparing. The proof on my phone wasn't just for me. It was my shield against her lies and deflections. I transferred the videos and photos to a secure folder on my laptop, backing them up multiple times. I wanted no chance for her to dismiss or destroy the evidence. The biggest question, however, was timing. Elena had no idea that I knew, and I intended to keep it that way until I was ready to strike. Confronting her too soon might let her spin a web of excuses, but waiting too long would eat away at me. I decided to confront her that evening, face to face, where she couldn't run or hide. As the hours ticked by, I played out every possible scenario in my head. Would she admit to it right away? Deny it until she had no choice? Beg for forgiveness? My emotions swung wildly between anger and heartbreak. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the betrayal of trust, the erosion of years we'd spent building a life together. When she walked through the door that night, she was all smiles, her gym bag slung over her shoulder. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing me lightly on the cheek. The smell of that same unfamiliar cologne lingered in the air, twisting the knife further. I forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. "Hey, how was your workout?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "It was good," she replied casually, setting her bag down. "I'm going to grab a quick shower." "Not yet," I said, my tone firmer now. "We need to talk." She froze, her hand hovering over the bag. "About what?" I motioned for her to sit at the dining table. My laptop was already open, the incriminating video paused at a damning frame, her hand on that man's arm, her smile unmistakable. "What is this?" I asked, turning the screen toward her. Her face drained of color as she stared at the image. "Where did you—" "Don't!" I cut her off, my voice cold. "Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The panic in her eyes said it all. For the first time, the power shifted, and she realized she couldn't lie her way out of this. "I deserve the truth," I said, my voice shaking with controlled fury. "Every single detail." And then the excuses began. Elena's lips parted, but the words that followed were a tangled mess of excuses and half-truths. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice quivering as her eyes darted between me and the screen. "He's just a friend, I swear." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow in the tense air. "A friend? A friend who takes you to candlelit dinners and hotels? A friend who gives you jewelry?" I gestured at the silver bracelet, glinting on her wrist, a physical reminder of her betrayal. "Spare me the lies, Elena." Her hand instinctively went to the bracelet, twisting it nervously. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said softly, tears welling in her eyes. I was lonely, okay? You've been so distant lately, always working, always preoccupied. I felt invisible, and he noticed me." The audacity of her words struck me like a slap. "You felt invisible?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea what I've been doing all these late nights? Working my ass off to give us a better life. Make sure you have everything you need." Her tears spilled over now, her face a picture of guilt and desperation. "I know," she whispered. "I know you've been good to me, But it wasn't enough. I needed more. More attention, more affection, more everything. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it just did. I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. You needed more? So instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix whatever was wrong, you decided to sneak around behind my back? To lie to me? To humiliate me? Elena buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. I didn't want to hurt you, she cried. I thought I could end it before you found out. I never meant for it to get this far. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Her words might have sounded remorseful, but they rang hollow to me. If she hadn't wanted to hurt me, she wouldn't have done it in the first place. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a calculated betrayal, repeated over and over. You didn't mean for it to get this far, I said, my voice cold and sharp. Elena, every single decision you made brought you here. Every time you texted him, every time you lied about the gym, every time you got in his car or went to that hotel, you made a choice. Her sobs grew louder, but I wasn't moved. I loved you, I continued, my voice trembling. I trusted you, and you threw it all away for, what, a fling? A cheap thrill? She finally looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. I'll end it, she pleaded. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Just don't leave me, please. But as I stared at her, I realized something crucial. Her promises didn't matter anymore. This wasn't just about what she had done. It was about what I was willing to tolerate. And I wasn't sure there was anything left to salvage. Elena's pleas echoed in the silence, but they didn't reach me. I stood there, staring at her tear-streaked face, feeling an unfamiliar numbness settle over me. The anger that had fueled me moments ago was fading, replaced by a cold clarity. This wasn't just about her infidelity anymore. It was about me deciding what kind of person I wanted to be and what kind of life I wanted to live. I'll end it, she repeated, her voice breaking. I'll block him. I'll quit the gym. I'll do anything you want. Her desperation was palpable, but instead of softening me, it felt like a trap. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the fact that she only seemed willing to change because she got caught. If I hadn't followed her that night, she would still be sneaking around, weaving her web of lies. You don't get it, do you? I said quietly, my voice steady but laced with a new edge. This isn't about you ending it or making promises you should have kept in the first place. This is about trust. About the fact that you broke it. And I don't know if it can ever be repaired. She flinched at my words, as if they physically hurt her. I'll make it up to you, she said, her hands reaching for mine. We can go to counseling. We can start over. Please, don't give up on us. Ah! I pulled my hands away, her touch now feeling foreign to me. Us? I echoed bitterly. There hasn't been an us in a long time, Elena. You made sure of that when you decided to turn to someone else instead of facing whatever problems we had together. The room fell into a tense silence, her sobs now subdued to quiet sniffles. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Part of me wanted to lash out, to yell to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. But what would that accomplish? Words couldn't rewind the clock or undo the damage she'd done. I need time, I finally said, breaking the silence. I need to figure out if this marriage is even worth saving. Right now, I don't see how it is. Her face crumpled and fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I love you. I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. You don't love me, Elena. You love the idea of me. You love the comfort and security I provide, but love, real love doesn't do this. Real love doesn't betray, doesn't lie, doesn't leave someone feeling like they're not enough. Her sobs grew louder again, but I couldn't stay in the room anymore. I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. As I stepped outside, the cold night air hit me, and for the first time in months I felt a strange sense of relief. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, something better. And this time, it would be on my terms. Walking out of that room felt like shedding a heavy weight I'd been carrying for too long. The cool night air hit my face, sharp and refreshing, jolting me into the reality of my next steps. For so long, I'd been living in the shadow of Elena's lies. But now, for the first time, I could see clearly. I wasn't just a man betrayed. I was a man on the brink of rediscovery. As I drove aimlessly through the city, my thoughts began to organize themselves. I replayed the last few years of our marriage, dissecting every moment where things had started to unravel. The truth was, I had ignored the warning signs. I had convinced myself that Alienator's distant behavior was a phase, that her late nights and guarded phone weren't red flags, but deep down I'd known something was wrong. Regret bubbled to the surface. Not regret for confronting her, that had been inevitable, but regret for letting things slide for so long. I should have spoken up earlier, demanded honesty, or at least paid attention to the growing cracks in our relationship. But blaming myself would serve no purpose now. What mattered was what I did moving forward. I parked my car at a quiet overlook, the city lights twinkling below me. The stillness of the moment gave me space to think. Elena's betrayal had shattered the foundation of our marriage, but it also forced me to confront my own needs and values. Did I want to spend the rest of my life wondering if I could ever trust her again? Did I want to wake up every day questioning her every word and action? The answer was clear. I couldn't. Trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild. Even if Elena followed through on her promises, even if she cut ties with the other man, the scars of her infidelity would linger. I didn't want to live in a relationship that felt like a battlefield, constantly bracing for the next betrayal. But it wasn't just about her. It was about me, about reclaiming my sense of self. Over the years, I'd lost pieces of who I was, sacrificing my own happiness to keep the peace. I'd buried my feelings, ignored my instincts, and let myself become a background character in my own life. Elena's affair wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was a wake-up call. As I sat there, I made a decision. I would move forward, not out of spite or bitterness, but out of a desire to find something better, something real. I would prioritize myself for the first time in years, rediscovering who I was and what I wanted. The thought gave me a strange sense of peace. The pain was still there, sharp and raw, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was the kind of pain that came with growth, with shedding the old to make room for the new. I started the car, a new determination coursing through me. My life wasn't over, it was just beginning. The morning after my confrontation with Elena dawned brighter than I expected, as though the world itself had decided to reflect the clarity I'd gained the night before. I hadn't slept much, but for the first time in a long while I didn't feel the suffocating weight of uncertainty. I had made my decision, and now it was time to act on it. Elena was already awake, sitting silently at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her face pale. The bracelet he had given her was gone, and for a brief moment I wondered if that was supposed to be some kind of silent gesture, a feeble attempt to show remorse. "I've thought about what you said," I began, my voice calm but resolute, "and I've made my decision." She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. "Please, just give me a chance to fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll prove to you that I can change." I shook my head, the answer clear in my heart. "This isn't something that can be fixed, Elena. What you did didn't just hurt me. It destroyed the foundation of everything we built together. Trust, respect, loyalty. All of it is gone. And without that, there's no marriage left." And tears streamed down her face, but I didn't feel the same pull of pity I might have before. She made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. "So, that's it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That's it," I said firmly. "I'll pack my things and move out today. I've already reached out to a lawyer to start the divorce process. This isn't something I'm doing lightly, but it's what needs to happen." Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't linger. I walked back upstairs and began packing my belongings. It felt surreal, moving through the house that had once been a sanctuary, now a hollow shell of broken promises. I packed deliberately, leaving behind anything tied to the last we had built together. I didn't need reminders of a past that no longer existed.